There we go. Welcome to the April 4th, 2023 Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Let's see, let's have our call to order. We've just had that. Madam Secretary, could we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Kiever,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Meyer,
I'm here also.
Commissioner Case, Commissioner Whitefield,
Here.
Commissioner Schutte,
Here.
Commissioner Caldwell,
Here.
Commissioner Walt. A quorum is present.
Thank you so much. All right, at this point, we will entertain public comments. The public is invited to comment and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I see John Steele out there. I know he wants to address us. So John, would you come on up? Please state your name for the record. And then tell us what's on your mind.
All right, microphone's on?
Yes.
It is. All right, my name is Jonathan Steele. I'm a resident of Carson City. And I saw many of you out in Sonoma Park this morning. And that will lead me right into why I'm here. I have a fund development proposal for you to consider. And that is this. Sonoma Park is just an example, but I'm going to refer specifically to it because I live across the street from it. And I'm very familiar with the people that visit there, their companion dogs, and the attitude of what's going on in Sonoma Park. And I think it's reflective of many of the parks in Carson City. There are a lot of benches there, and there are a lot of trees, not enough with the heat coming on for shade. There's a playground there that has 4 or 5 benches in it itself. My proposal is this, that the city considers developing a proactive marketing campaign offering memorial plaques to benches, trees, creating more trees, more shade, maybe even a gazebo, and naming memoriams to, it could be on a fence, could be for the playground that's there. There's so much creativity that is just lacking there. It's just standing there, and a lot of fundraising possibilities there. As an example, I've created and submitted to Dave Navarro a bronze plaque for a beloved member of the community who's a terrific storyteller and entertainer, and there's about a dozen of us that got together and want to put a plaque on the bench there. And I've already submitted that to Dave and haven't heard back from him, but that's not why I'm here. We'll get that resolved. The real issue is there's an opportunity here that I think you should consider in terms of fundraising for the benefit of the community. And what happens in a park when you have people contributing? They could either be names on bricks, names on plaques, any kind of naming possibility. People come to see it and they bring their family members, and it creates a different milieu, a different environment, a whole different feeling in that park. I've seen it happen before, and not just parks. So that's really the nub of why I'm here, is to make a proposal to you, and I'll be glad to work on it with anybody. It will require, of course, proactive marketing, communication of what this is, what the charges will be to the local community. And I'll leave you with this. I'll be glad to offer the cost of planting 4 or 5 new maple trees right in the middle of that darn park that is burning up in the middle of the sun, that needs shade, especially for an older generation that comes out there once or even twice a day. So there are thousands of people that visit this park all year long. And I hate to see the static nature of the park just remain the way it is. We need to grow it and provide more of a community feeling there. And I think this might be a real strategy to implement. That's it.
Any comments from the commission or from Jen? Commissioner Leah?
I had a public comment. I'm taking a bit to gather, and with explanation, there was an
You still have time, Denny.
Oh, it's still community. This was a presentation. Public comment.
Hi, Mr. Steele.
Hi.
Mr. Steele, did I get that right? Awesome.
Certainly.
Are you familiar with the Carson City Parks and Recreation Foundation? The fundraising
I know it
arm?
exists.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that
Yes.
might be, if you're looking for like accounting and fundraising purposes, that might be a better place since this commission can't really hold funds, but that group can. So if you're looking for an account management, we might have to go over to that
Sure.
area.
To execute. No, I understand that. But at the same time, isn't it the responsibility of the Parks Commission to give their imprimatur on whatever is going on in that park? So it has to, a policy has to be established here first, or at least a statement of intention. Because if I go to them, they're going to say, yeah, but what did the Parks Commission say?
Jen, would you like
Madam
to
Chair,
address?
can I just jump in? Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. This is public comment, so it's not a time for us to go back and forth. However, I do just want to point out some of the ideas that he brought forward, which are great. We did include in our memorial policy, which the Board of Supervisors approved already. We have staff is working on a brochure for memorial benches and some proactive advertising like you talked about. So we've taken some initial steps and we can always move forward, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that outside of the
Absolutely
meeting
great.
because it's not on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jen. I appreciate it. Any other comments from the commissioners? John, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on down. Anytime. We always like to hear from the public. Sir, would you like to come on down? All right. Would you please state your name for the record?
Thank you, Chair. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I just was involved in an incident outside, and the incident involved people in a vehicle shooting at me with an airsoft rifle. It sounded like a taser coming at me. The injury happened when I went down to take cover and landed on my rotator cuff elbow again. So I re-injured my shoulder again, this third time on that poor baby. But
Sir,
the-
exactly where did this take place?
just right out here off of Oxby, off of Fifth Street. I've reported it to Jennifer Budge. I'm sorry, I have social anxiety and I'm afraid it's kicked up through this. And thank you all for your patience. I'm here today to mention the fact that I am looking forward to more conversation about Mills Park. I think that's unfinished business. I was really left with a sense that hadn't really been thought through in so many different ways, and I think more discussion on that is necessary, and I would like to put through that I don't feel that having a street there is conducive to the park in any way, shape, or form. It might make it convenient for emergency services and different things like that, but they do have access to every place on the park that I know of in the vehicles that they've had on the park. Having a fire car, or a fire station, or the police, having a service road might have been convenient, but having a street is a whole nother matter. So I'd like to see more discussion open about that. I also have Empire Cemetery on my heart. It seems like it's just sort of hanging out there, and I think as people are taking up the process of buying property for the city or taking in more, even Ms. Sullivan brought up the fact that we have to consider conserving some of the properties for certain things. And I'd like to suggest, as Parks and Recreation, we may not be so much into the nature thing like open space, but that insects need homes. And we already spray them at parks. We already have other things that turn them away in some ways. But that we have to, I think if we're going to pick up parks, maybe land to call a park, but have it as a reserve park with benches and such in it, but that the plantation around it is for the encouragement of insects. I also am concerned about the Freeman Richards house. The house is in great shape. The people did a wonderful job on it. I reported to Parks and Rec when I was there that there was an issue with the fact that there was a concern for safety right there present hazard, so I took care of that. I stuck the post back up against the main support of the fence, and I don't know if I found a rock or whatever to re-nail it, because the way it was either going to come over or off onto somebody as they were walking or catch somebody's coat or such. So I just took care of that, but I'd like that to have been, looked at. I know that there is a plan to have some work done on that area, and I do understand that, but real and present dangers, I report right away and try to take care of them if I can do otherwise. And I'm really sorry, the concern about the Mills Park situation is, for me, having discussions is very hard to have. Some of us don't have a computer type deal. And I also reported to Parks and Rec that their site wasn't open, wasn't available. It wasn't accessible on the computer from the library. And so I couldn't access some of your formats. And again, I apologize, I'll have myself together and I have more statement of clarification, but I think I brought up some of my issues. The Empire Cemetery, I think that's got to be addressed, whether it's going to be a park or open space or what. But, if it's available, and get to it. It needs some observation and care. And so I'm lost. I'm going to have to
No,
let
you're
you go
doing
so I
fine.
don't
Don't
hold you
worry
any
about it.
longer. And thank you for the time.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. French?
No questions, Denny, but thank you for getting up here and speaking. I think that's really important, and it's vital to our community that you continue to do that to the best of your ability every single time. I appreciate
Well,
you.
thank you very much. And I didn't know that. I could have just maybe even directed some questions, but I know. No, but you have questions. Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. French, going forward, if there's something you would like to see on the agenda, you're always welcome to contact the Parks and Recreation Department and say, what about putting this on the next agenda? And then that way we could have a more detailed discussion regarding that item.
Can I address that sort of frankly? In the sense that I'm a face-to-face person. When I try to communicate through any related type stuff, if I don't have the feedback, I don't know if I'm being understood. And so my method is calling and such. And then also, I would always want to be able to say whatever I'm going to whatever panel and committee. So I'm hoping that you will pass some of my concerns on to the parks and such, but certainly I would appreciate that opportunity, and I'll look to it in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Robin Orloff, Carson City. Good evening, good afternoon. I wanted to thank you all for all you do for the parks in our town, and let you know I'm kind of an open space person. I'm usually out trail running and doing that kind of thing, but I do go to all the parks. And when I did home care and went all over the city, I would usually stop in a park in that neighborhood and do my paperwork and my phone calls, and I truly enjoy them. And now when I'm out doing errands, I'll stop, and each one has their own character. So I appreciate staff and the commission for all you do. I have a suggestion separate from that, or a request for you to consider regarding public comment and the agenda. And I came in late, so I don't know if there will be public comment today after each item. But whether you decide that or not, I'm wondering if that could be indicated on the agenda so that the public would know what to expect at the meeting. And prior to 2019, under Mayor Crowell and before COVID, Parks and Rec and Open Space agendas actually indicated after every single discussion or action item, public comment, public comment, public comment. So we knew what to expect and how to prepare, because preparing just one comment at the beginning and one at the end might not address the various agenda items in between. So, and I think that would be really helpful for transparency. And the Planning Commission, as an example, has done that before 2019, and even during COVID, during 2020, they reinstituted that. And it says very clear at the end where they talk about public comment, they say, we value something we value. I brought it with me. I don't know what I did with it. We value public comment, and we welcome comment after the agenda item that you're concerned about, so it's relevant to the discussion. And that's really good for the public to know because we can prepare. And we would appreciate that consideration, perhaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments. We appreciate them. Are there any other public comments? All right. Hearing none, let's move on to agenda item 5A. No, I apologize. Agenda item 4, approval of minutes from our February 7th, 2023 meeting. Has everybody read the minutes? Do we have any comments, changes, or corrections?
Motion to approve?
All right, there's a motion to approve. We have a second? All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Would this be one of the, Jen, excuse me, would this be where we would ask for public comment, or do we ask?
So you would go to discussion, so then you would call for public comment before you vote.
Okay,
So that way, if there's any members of the public that wanted to comment, like on the minutes for what you just did, and then you could take the vote after.
okay.
But since you started taking public comment, I would recommend that you do so after each item
Okay, we can do that, just so,
for
Before the
consistency,
vote, so
before your vote.
all right.
Because
so
you might
now-
want to consider public comment.
Okay, so
before you
going
sh-
forward with the rest of the agenda, we'll do that.
Yes. It doesn't need to be noted on the agenda for you to take public comment after each item.
One of the things that Robin brought up that is not on our agenda, that could possibly be on our agenda, is stating exactly that, so that people can understand that they can come and talk on a specific item after we've had a presentation by the staff or whoever comes to bring it to us. And that's one of the things that's not clear on the agenda. And I think that's one of the things that she's coming at us with, is that she wants it to be clear so people that are coming to the meeting and wanting to participate in the meeting know the rules of engagement. So just put that on record.
I like that thought. So do we have to redo the vote on the minutes, Ben, or can we go forward and?
No, you can proceed, and just, even though it's not on the agenda, we follow direction usually from the Board of Supervisors regarding the format, and so, as Ms. Orloff stated, during COVID, most committees weren't doing public comment after each item, and so our agenda changed. And once that had been re-implemented, so now there is public comment after the Board of Supervisors after each agenda item. We also started following that again. And so the reason why it still doesn't appear is just because we mimic what the Board of Supervisors agenda look like. We can add it if that's, what the board wants. I mean, we're not going to take a vote on that now, obviously, but, that's an easy fix, but it's not required under open meeting law, so that's why it's not stated.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Let's move on to agenda item 5A. Discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors concerning proposed policies and procedures related to the creation of a youth scholarship program with Dan. Dan, would you like to share with us what you know?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the record, Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent. So I'm excited to be able to talk about the development of a youth scholarship program. This is something that we've talked about for a few years now, I believe. And I believe that we're finally to the point where we can get ready to launch this with this discussion here and working out the parameters of that and the management side of things. And hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that. But the funds are there for at least getting started, in my opinion. So just a little bit about the youth scholarship program. The goals that I've had in that youth scholarship, first and foremost, is we just wanted to make sure that our programs are more accessible to the youth of our community, especially for those lower income families. I mean, we always have a goal of keeping our programs lower cost as much as possible. But even still, some of our programs are cost prohibitive. So having a scholarship program to even make those programs more affordable is our number one goal. But then also we wanted to create a low maintenance program that doesn't require a lot of staff time to manage, because we just don't have the staff to really manage an in-depth scholarship program. As we've given some examples from some other cities for you to look at as well, but some of them have multi-tiered. And we just wanted to keep it simple, especially in the beginning, as we're trying to manage this. This third goal was we wanted renewable funding. So this is something we've been talking about for years, but we're finally getting to the point where we're ready to launch. Because I know the foundation, especially Mayor Bagwell, has worked really hard on getting donations. And donations are phenomenal for the program. But at the same time, if they're a one-time donation and then we expend those in a year, I wanted to make sure that I didn't offer a scholarship program for 1 year. So I want to make sure that we felt comfortable that we would have a way to have at least a minimum amount in that fund year after year so that we could keep the program going. And then that last bit was that minimum we felt was about $6,000. Obviously, the more we have, the more scholarships we can potentially offer. But based off of what we thought we were going to need, we thought $6,000 would at least be able to get us started. So those are the goals of the scholarship program, at least that I had from staff's point of view. So the current funding that we have right now, or the balance that we have, so through the donations from the Parks Foundation, they've gotten $4,400 from community donations. And then on the department event fundraisers, we've gotten approval to basically run a handful of internal fundraisers that we do, generally through special events. So we do like a dodgeball tournament. A couple weeks ago, we just did a cornhole tournament at the MAC. And so we take the revenues from those and they go into the youth scholarship. So we plan on running several of those throughout the year. Just small events, but each one brings in, $1,000, $2,000. But that alone, if in case the donations cease, we believe that those events that we run will be able to keep at least that minimum of $6,000 in the account year after year. But anyway, so we have a total right now of just shy of $10,000. So that's why we believe we're ready to launch a scholarship program, and we want to bring this to the commission for discussion so that we can work out that admin side of things, what the guidelines will be of that scholarship, so that we can hopefully launch that here pretty soon. So the reviewing multiple cities scholarship programs, we gave you 3 examples from Nevada in your packet. So we had Sparks, Reno, and Clark County. But we also reviewed probably a dozen others throughout the country, just kind of look at and see how they're doing it. So we kind of compiled those guidelines to what made sense for Carson City, and this is what we came up with. And there's a few more that are in your packet, but these ones here cover the main ones. But obviously, this is pretty standard across all the cities, is that it is not an indefinite fund. We have so much money in it, so if the funds run out, we can no longer offer scholarships. So they're available on a first come, first served basis as long as funds are available. This was something that we saw was pretty common, but just because we don't have a huge fund, we wanted to put a max amount of benefit per youth, which we determined as $200 that they can use annually, because we didn't want it to be too much, because then we'll run out, and we wanted to benefit as many youth as possible. If we continue to have fundraisers, we get more donations, we can always adjust this amount. But we wanted to, the 200 is probably on the lower amount than what we've seen other cities do, but we wanted to make sure we can get the scholarship going. And like I said, we can always adjust that if that fund becomes more healthy. And on that line as well, we wanted to do the scholarship to cover a 50% subsidy. What you'll see in those packets is a varying, some of them do tiers of 40, 50, 60%, depending on their income levels. Like I said, we wanted to keep it simple because we just don't have the staff to really manage in-depth program. So we're just doing a flat 50% discount for now. And once again, if that fund becomes healthier over the years, then we could always bump that amount up to a higher discount rate. But right now we wanted to do 50% because that was something we felt like we could handle. And then the participants will be required at the time of registration to pay the remaining 50%.
Thank you, and I can wait to ask questions at the end if you would prefer that.
However, if you have questions now, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. So on this 50%, so I read the scholarships granted to pay or for a maximum of 200, and then, so you could apply it towards several different um, programs.
Correct.
If a child really just wanted to focus on one and not apply to the others, or if it was just cost prohibitive to participate in more than one, could it be possible that the 200 could go toward or up to $100 or whatever it is? And I know I don't want to muddy the water because I know it's a complicated but that came to mind as I was reading it, that there are kids who families wouldn't be able to afford the 50% of numerous. So if that could be a consideration.
Yes, so I believe that can,
Thank
if
you.
that's the pleasure of the commission, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors. Because I believe how it basically will be managed is that if they are, after they apply, and if we approve their application, they meet the income requirements, what, I believe how we manage, when we had a scholarship program in the past for the youth program, we had a fund and we basically just applied that $200 onto their account in ActiveNet, which is our registration software, and then they could apply that from their account as they register for programs that were eligible programs. Well, at that time, it was just the youth program. So we could, so if that's what we decide, we were gonna make it so you could only get 50% discount, but they had $200 in their account. So if that's the pleasure of the commission, we could just say you have $200.
Okay.
And it
And
could
I
be-
just want to be respectful of the thinking behind it, though, because I trust that there's a reason or that you're wanting some sort of buy-in as well, because I understand that that's important also, that when people pay a fee, they're also, there's that commitment side of it as well. So it was just something I wanted to ask about, if there was a reason why it was limited to 50, or if that's something that you're comfortable with more discussion.
Yeah, so I
And-
mean, I think our thought process behind the 50% is a couple of reasons. One, it does give a buy-in so that we do know that when there's not a financial buy-in to a program, that often they don't show up. And we do have requirements in here later on that they have to attend at least, if it's a multi-class type program, that they have to attend at least 60% of those, because we wanted to prevent that from happening where they take the scholarship funds and then they don't show up. So when they're invested into the program, there is more of a commitment for attending. And then also the goal being just making sure that we're spreading out and we want to make sure as many youth get to access the scholarship, but also that those youth get to benefit from the variety of programs that we have. So if they use it all on the ski program, for example, that's great that they get to benefit from that, but then they can't, there's not gonna be any funds available for them to do swim lessons or anything else. So we
I-
wanted to make sure that they could participate in as many programs as they
I
could.
love what you just said, to give them an opportunity to benefit from as many as they can. And this would definitely plant the seed for that. So that works for me.
So yeah, so that's the reasoning for the 50%, but obviously we do
Perfect,
have
okay.
the ability to manage it otherwise if that is what is desired.
Okay, I appreciate the reasoning. Thank you.
So just moving on with the guidelines, they do need to be a Carson City resident. This is for youth that are 17 years or younger. Applications must be received at least 14 days before they can register for a program that would benefit from scholarship funds. So give us a staff time to process their application and notify them and make sure that they are clear on the guidelines. We mentioned this already, but participants need to attend at least 60% of the classes or meetings. And then with that, scholarship privileges may be terminated at discretion of management if they are not attending that 60%, or if we find out that their account status is past due 2 weeks, that if they're not keeping up with payments or anything like that. Generally speaking, we're going to require payment that 50% at the time of registration. So there shouldn't be this development of a past due account. But if for some reason it did, we wanted that wording in there that we had the ability to kind of revoke those privileges if they're not paying for their registration. The only exception to the ages and things like that, and this is open for discussion, but at the last meeting, we talked about the Movers and Doers Adaptive Recreation Program, and it was agreed by the commission that we wanted that to be a subsidized program, but we obviously need to figure out how do we subsidize that. And so talking with our director, Jen, we felt that this would be a good way to do that, if when they're planning a Movers and Doers program, if they were going to an amusement park or something like that, and they needed to subsidize that they could take those funds from the scholarship fund to be able to subsidize, make that more affordable for the adaptive participants. But because of that, I didn't want them to have to apply for a scholarship and go through that process. We're determined that program, the Movers and Doers, was a subsidized program from 10 to 40%. I think that tier 2 on the fee policy. And so we're just going to apply those funds and just keep it low cost. And if they have to, take from the scholarship fund to cover those costs, we just want to do it that way. But that's how we felt we could subsidize that program. And a lot of the Movers and Doers are older than 17 years old. A lot of them are adults with special needs. And so we just wanted to, but not all of them are necessarily, we don't want to have them go through the scholarship application and financial things for the Movers and Doers program. They only do usually one activity a month. A lot of them are here locally and we keep them really cheap anyway, but a couple times a year they'll go do a little bit more expensive activity up in Reno or something. And so we wanted to keep that simple. But that's up for discussion as well. But those are the guidelines that we've set.
Excuse me a minute. I believe Commissioner Chase and then Commissioner Whitfield have questions for
Okay.
you. Leah?
Thank you. On the scholarship privileges may be terminated if participant attendance is less than 60%. What does that mean to terminate scholarship privileges?
So basically, what that means is we're not going to all of a sudden say you have to pay for the remainder of this program you're registered for, but they're no longer, at the discretion of management, if we feel like they may not be able to continue using the scholarship. So for future registrations, so let's say they're in swim lessons and they only show up one time, then we might say, we probably will give them a warning and things like that first, but if we feel like it's necessary, if they continue to do that, then we say, we're going to remove the scholarship privileges. So if you want to continue participating in our programs, unfortunately, the scholarship's not going to be available to you because you're taking advantage of the funds and not taking advantage of the programs.
And so how do you track that? Do you have like a mark in their account, or what does that look like administratively?
Yeah, I mean, just for any of our programs, with the different staff that are managing those programs, we have attendance sheets for most of them, and we keep track of. Depends on the program. Sometimes it is, yes. Sometimes we do it with our ActiveNet Connect app. We do it on the iPad. It has an app that we check people in. It's like, for example, on the ski program, on the app, I can, as I get on the bus, I press a button on the app. So sometimes we're old school on paper. Sometimes we can actually, be advanced, do it on an iPad. Just depends on the program.
Physical paper gives me anxiety. Like I would lose it and it's a mess. So thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Sharpie. Two questions. How many awards do you expect to make typically? And then kind of related to that is can you give us an idea of the range of the costs of the programs that you're thinking about?
Absolutely. As far as the number, I mean, it'll be to determine, but based off of our youth program, which is under the Children's Cabinet, we have an idea that roughly about 10% of those participants qualify. Whether or not they all go through the application process and do that is a whole nother story.
Reason I ask is I just did a little quick math. If you allowed $200 per participants and you're going to award $6,000 a year, that's only 30 right? Is that enough?
It's a start, right? I mean, it's 30 kids is better than none, right? And obviously, we
Absolutely.
want that fund to continue to grow. Right now, we have 10,000 in it, so if we can keep that going, then we can benefit more children.
So 10% of how many of participants?
I would have to
Not
get
sure.
back to you on
Okay,
a stronger
that's
number on
okay.
that.
Okay.
Thank you. I wonder, and this is just, I'm throwing it out there, if you would consider the parents volunteering. So those participants who receive, the scholarship, if there isn't an opportunity for their parent to volunteer, if that would be considered as part of the eligibility as well. I do know, as Commissioner of AYSO, we needed a lot of volunteers, setting up fields, taking down fields, refereeing, coaching, scorekeeping, whatever the case may be. And when we had participants get a scholarship, one of the eligibility requirements is that their parent had to volunteer, be a team manager, whatever the case. And it was extremely successful, getting their parents to buy into, the scholarship as well. And then parent participation, it really helped that as well. And then it helped us fill the gaps during that time too. So I don't know if that would ever be a consideration, maybe not this time, but moving forward.
No, I think that's a great suggestion. We always could use volunteers, especially coaches in our youth sports, things like that. I wouldn't want their ability to volunteer to make it so that a kid couldn't participate in something. So I think I would maybe lean more towards an encouragement and provide volunteer opportunities, but not make it conducive upon getting the scholarship on their ability to volunteer, because they might be working multiple jobs or doing whatever. So I wouldn't, if they don't have the time, I wouldn't want that to make it so that their children can participate.
On that, Dan, if a parent did volunteer, would maybe could they work off the program fees? Would that be a possibility? Or you wouldn't want to consider that be too convoluted for accounting purposes?
We have not considered that. It would definitely add a lot more tracking for our staff to do. But it's something we could consider for sure. But we'd have to make sure we have a way to manage that. And then to get back to Commissioner Whitefield's the scale. So a lot of our programs, are in the $20 to $40 range, I would say, for like swim lessons. A lot of our camps, some of our specialty camps, like we're doing the sports camp this week, is $75. That's probably generally on the higher end. The most expensive program that we have is the ski program, which was $235. Get a lot of benefit out of that, but that's our most expensive program that we're running right now. And then most everything's probably $75 and under. So speaking of programs, so the eligible programs that we came up with, we wanted to basically try and make it as much as we could with everything that we offer, where possible. So that would be swim lessons, lifeguard certification, first aid, CPR classes, junior lifeguard, any of our sports leagues for youth. So right now we have basketball and volleyball, youth sports camps and workshops. So I mentioned we're doing a spring break sports camp this week. That would be eligible. Parents' Night Out is a new program that the youth program is doing, but it's basically just a babysitting night on a Friday night. You can drop your kids off here. We'll do movies and games, and parents can go out. So that would be an eligible program. Any of our outdoor education programs, like the ski program, youth kayak camp, a lot of our programs are not youth-based. They might just be a kayaking trip or a snowshoe trip. But if they wanted to assign someone who's 17 or under up for that, then that would also be eligible as well. They can come with their parent, and then the youth would be discounted. We're working on developing some art classes right now for this summer. The Ranger-led programs, I put that in there. They've so far always been free, but if for some reason down the road they did something that did have a fee, I think that this could be eligible for that. And then we also decided that we would include memberships as well for youth-specific aquatic facility memberships, MAC memberships, so that they can come to those facilities and benefit from the health benefits of that. And then I mentioned the Movers and Doers programs. And then obviously we don't want to have to come back here every time we have a new program that's not on this list. So basically anything that we offer that's similar to any of those moving forward would also qualify as well. And then the non-eligible programs would basically just be our before and after school program and our summer day camp. And the reasoning for that is because they are eligible for Children's Cabinet. So they already have a scholarship program. So we didn't want to dilute our funds any further than we needed to keep it for the other programs. And then this is open for discussion. I put that on there, but we initially, when I was writing the staff report, I excluded any activities taught through a contractor. So we have a lot of contract classes, and they're run by businesses where the contractor sets the fees, and we didn't really want to take away from their fees. But then in retrospect, thinking of the way that we're managing it, I mean, most of those are adult classes anyway, like a lot of fitness classes and things. But if we had, the reality is if they apply those funds, the contractor is going to get their funds, even if they are qualified for a scholarship, because they'll have it on their account, they'll pay. So as far as the contractor is concerned, it's registered the same way. So they wouldn't see a difference. I just didn't want the contractors to have to support our scholarship program. But so that's something that we could discuss as well if we wanted to include contract classes. But right now I have them as excluded. And then setting the requirements was difficult. Everyone uses a different system. So we tried to be as consistent as we could. And so what we had decided on was the 150% of federal poverty level, this is the breakdown here. So depending on how many people you have in your household and how much all the members of that house, their income is, would determine. And so if they fall less than this, then they would qualify for the scholarship. So if they had 4 people in their household and the total household income was less than $45,000, then they would qualify for the scholarship. So that is it on the scholarships. Okay.
Thanks again. And just on I have lots of things written down, but on the income eligibility guidelines, I like the Clark County portion that you included in the exhibit packet, that people can show like their Medicaid card or their food stamp card or TANF or, these other programs that also have the same income eligibility, and just, show that instead of staff having to figure out from 2 pay stubs, or if maybe the person doesn't even have pay stubs or their child support income, just something to help determine that eligibility outside of just the income. I would strongly suggest that.
Yeah, we looked into that, excuse me, that option as well, because we have seen that's what some agencies do, is they just say, if you qualify for any of these other financial aid programs, then you can qualify for ours. The reason why we were suggesting this direction was because a lot of those other financial aid programs have slightly different requirements. And this is how when we ran a scholarship program for the youth program, it's been 5 or 6 years, I think, since we've done that. This is how we did it. And the staff had said it was when they turned in the application and we looked at their pay stubs, and it was not overly time consuming. It took about maybe 15 minutes to review the application. And so just for simplicity purposes, but we're open. I mean, like I said, this all is open for discussion. This is just kind of our staff recommendation of how we thought we'd manage it.
This is awesome. So kudos and thank you. And so I just wanted to applaud this effort. I also wanted to say thank you for, on the participants are required to attend a minimum of 60%, because I saw on the other applications, it was a 75% minimum attendance. And part of, some of the difficulties that these kids or their families might be facing could include transportation and all of that. And so it's just part of the whole process. So thank you for doing that. There was one area that I was wondering, back to the amount applied. I was just thinking about the lifeguard certification. And there is such a need for lifeguards, and if that could perhaps be an exception for being able to apply the $200 toward the cost of lifeguard certification, because then that in and of itself provides an employment opportunity. So just something to throw out there.
Well, and on that note too, so on the fee schedule a year ago, just because of our employment difficulties, we actually waived lifeguarding fees for those who are intending on working for us because of that burden, right? We didn't want the lifeguard certification cost to be prohibitive of coming to work for us. And so generally speaking, if you're a Carson City resident and you're taking the lifeguarding class, we're going to check with them and see if, hey, you think, if you pass, you're going to work for us. And they have to be a resident to qualify for the scholarship. So I have that on the list of eligible programs, but in reality, if they're a Carson City resident and they're taking the class, it's probably going to be free anyway, because we're hoping that that means that they're going to come work for us.
Thank you. And I know Director Budge said that we weren't going to be here all night, but I might keep us here all night because I am super excited about this program. I am just so proud of you all for putting this together. And kind of in the same vein as Commissioner Schutte, we had the presentation from the pool a while back, and they talk about, and it just really stuck with me that swimming lessons, it's the only recreational activity that will save your life. And so that, if there's any way we can make sure that the highest number of children learn to swim earlier in life so that they have that skill forever. So if we can say 50% or up to $200, whatever that cost may be, to help cover those swim lessons, especially in the early years, I don't know how the rest of the commission would feel about that, but it's really personal to me that kids learn how to swim.
I don't have, that's the end of the presentation for scholarships, so I think it's just
Right.
discussion.
Are there any other questions or concerns from the commission?
So the goal is, if that is possible, if you feel comfortable with that, obviously, then we can move forward with it. Because if you feel comfortable moving forward with this today, we can get it through the Board of Supervisors, and I'm hoping that we can actually implement July 1 of this year to be able to start offering scholarships. But that's only obviously if we're ready to move forward with, as we've kind of designed it.
So, has there been anything that we've brought up that is an obstacle for you moving forward if we make a motion?
No, I think everything that's been brought up has been something we can manage. I think it's been only as suggested. So I think we would probably need a little bit clearer direction if we wanted, like, the $200 amount. I think we probably need a little clearer direction on some of those things. If you want us to change that in the scholarship guidelines.
Well,
or not.
that was kind of my question, was how far do we need to drill down so you can move forward with this? Because we said there were some things on the presentation, if you want to talk about this, And so what do you want from us what do we need to drill down on so you can move forward with it?
Yeah, so I think the
from
things
this
that
meeting?
I would need would just be if you wanted to talk further about that, applying more than just the 50% for certain programs or not.
Well, I really like what you said at the end, because initially I did want to consider that. And I think there could be times where that might be appropriate. The flip side is, at the moment, there isn't a scholarship. And so 50% really, that's an opportunity to get the ball rolling, and we can kind of see how it goes, collect the data, if you will. But when you said, and it's such a great, insightful statement, that we want to allow kiddos to get their, try different sports, try different activities. And I think that's a real incentive to do that. So if somebody is awarded $200 and they can only apply $100 towards something, they're going to want to apply to use that other $100 and try other activities. And so in that regard, I'm very comfortable with the 50% cap.
Okay.
If everyone else is.
So I'm a little unclear. So Commissioner Studi, you're talking about giving them $200 after an application, and I was under the impression that it was, I want to bring my 2 kids to swimming lessons, and swimming lessons are $40 a session, and I'm going to fill out the paperwork, therefore I'm going to get a $20 discount on each one of my kids moving forward up to $200. Am I correct in that, or is it that you come to me and say, fill out the information, and I fill it out, and we give them $200 to spend however they want?
It's not to spend however they want.
Well, I
but
mean,
we'll have to
within
be
our program at a 50% discount. Within the program at a 50%
correct. So
discount.
how it would work and how it was managed, and I believe how we have to do it through ActiveNet, is that we award that $200 on their account. So it goes onto their account, but then we manage as they register to make sure that they can only apply 50% of it at a time as they register for swim lessons or for whatever it is. So up to, and then once it's gone, it's
gone.
it's gone.
Well, but with that, if they don't spend that, I mean, we're like Commissioner Whitefield said, that's going to be the scenario that I just gave you. That's going to be $160 that went away that could have been used in a different thing. So
So the calendar year is our fiscal year. So on June 30th, if we look through and we look through all of our scholarship applicants and those who are in the program, and if they didn't spend those funds, then we can,
So there's no
we
carryover.
can reach back, grab them, and put them in the account because they weren't spent.
correct,
Okay, so it's not wasted money.
correct. Yeah, we'll
Okay,
want to
great.
roll, we'll want
that
that
sounds
money to roll
fantastic.
back in if it's not expended, so
That
that way we
sounds
can
fantastic.
continue doing
As
it.
long as there's no carryover.
Sorry if I can jump in. So Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So it sounds like that money would be temporarily allocated for that individual. If they don't use that money within a year, it goes back into our pot, our scholarship fund. So that way, any unused funds would always go back to the community.
Would that be a calendar year for that person that applied, or would that be a fiscal year for that person?
We're planning on doing this through the fiscal year. So like if we started this July 1, then they have through June 30th to use up those funds. And if they don't, we'll roll them back in and then they have to reapply
Okay,
for the next year.
that explanation, that opens it up for me, and I understand it a lot better now, so thank you. And I just want to say, from the experience that I've had in all the years in recreation and also youth sports and things like that, the buy-in is huge. It's completely and totally huge. When you have those parents buy in at just a little bit of a level, you see more participation. When there is no buy-in, that participation just takes a nosedive. And that's just my experience. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Commissioner Walt?
Thank you. So I was just going to go ahead and move forward and make the motion. And then, and bring it back in a year, because I don't think that anything that was up here can, be fixed, and we definitely don't want to prolong it. You don't have much time to open up the process to get them going, for the swim lessons and whatever else. So at this time, I'll go ahead and make a motion. So I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the creation of the Youth Scholarship Program as
Excuse me,
presented.
Commissioner Walt,
Oops.
we need to have public comment before
Oh,
we take
sorry.
a motion. So, okay, Commissioner Case and then Mr. French. Is that okay? Well, you can come on up and sit and wait for us if you'd like, sir. Thank you. Okay, Leah?
Thanks again. On the income eligibility, you're not tied to that and making, like the pay stubs or something. If a better way comes up where you can use other things, that's not part of this motion if you need to. Is that correct?
I mean, I think for this, I just said we're bringing it back in a year. So I think if we move to approve this and this is the method that we would do it for this year, and then it sounds like you're going to move to maybe have us come back in a year and see how it went and maybe reevaluate. But if it's approved, then we would do it this way as it's written. And then obviously if we find that there's a better way to do it, we can adjust that in future years.
Thank you very much. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I was privileged to be able to go to the Open Parks and Recreation combined meeting, and there was concerns about having enough employees through the recreation program. And I just talked to Eric before I came in here about the issue earlier so that he would be aware of that, and I asked him about cameras. But the main thing is that getting staff right now seems to be a consideration, and you have a fairly ambitious program planned. He's going to have that next program done out soon, he suggested. I was going to bring a copy of the older ones to show just how amazingly, first off, that they're set up, how much I respect and appreciate Eric's work, and how thoughtful the whole thing is, and how much I'd like to get more involved in that specifically. But my thing is that you're not talking sustainable funding. And you're talking about a program that may be a year, but I didn't get a chance to read your supporting information. It took me a bit to get the program period, the agenda period this time, so I apologize for that. I like the idea of helping people. It's so hard to get your kids' tooth programs anyway, and then to be able to afford the gas, and then the program, and all the other considerations. So my concerns are on this, the sustainability. So I would like to see some look for funding that's going to be sustainable. And the gentleman that spoke very first suggested his park could use these benches and these things, and that if there was a way then to open for Memorial Park benches or different things or different ways to get funding. Now, I know a lot of grants for a lot of things lately, and some of those grants I'm not so sure where I would want those monies to go. But this sure seems like a great opportunity for somebody that's creative in grant writing. But I want to see the participation, but I want to make sure the staff's not all going to fall over dead from overwork because they're stretched so thin. And the programs are going to be beautiful, I'm just sure, and all the activities are great. And I just got turned on to them 2 years ago and haven't had a chance to utilize any of it. But the park programs, how much are the fees? I'm looking, but I'm not seeing numbers that relate to my understanding what they mean. Income less than, I get that, but how much are the programs costing, and how many people are involved? Some of those type of things, like maybe in your added material, which I wasn't able to access this time, but those type of things would have been helpful in this presentation for me as an outsider. But that I appreciate your program, because that really talks to your financial thing, but not in a way that I can relate it to, okay, this child's going to pay this much. And I really like both Shooty's and Chase and Walt's suggestions, volunteers, also on the fact that those that are going to maybe get employed. This is a great opportunity for recruitment and retainment. You get people trained, you get them into a program where they get enthused. They're going to come back and want to be working the next year. So thank you on those, and that was my comment. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Walt?
All right, thank you. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the creation of the Youth Scholarship Program as presented and brought back to the Parks and Rec Commission in a year to see how the program and any recommendations that we may have.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
We're going to Item 5B, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding a proposed Carson City employment incentive to include free drop-in use of the Robert Bob Kroll Multipurpose Athletic Center, the MAC, and the Carson Aquatic Facility for full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees. And again, we go to Dan.
Thank you. For the record, Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent. So this was a discussion that we started 2 months ago to kind of do some more research on and bring back to you. And so hopefully we're ready to do that. Pretty quick discussion, I believe, but so we thought about if we did have an incentive program for city staff to utilize the MAC and the pool with free memberships, how that would look and how we would manage that. And so the city has 627 full-time employees and approximately 256 part-time employees. Obviously, that changes from season to season. Obviously, not all of those would probably take advantage of having free access to the facilities. Probably very few actually really would, but there'd be some, and that would be the benefit of that. But without how we would manage this program, but basically the request that was brought up by Commissioner Case 2 months ago was that we offer free passes for city staff as an incentive for not only keeping staff healthier and happier, but also as an incentive for recruitment and also retention, which is really important. Obviously, especially right now, we're struggling to find staff to be able to have whatever incentives we can provide. Just a little bit, if free access to the pool help people work happier and stay, then I think it would totally be worth it. So, so that's what this proposal is for. How we would implement that is we talked to HR to see how they would want us to implement this, and basically they came up with a fairly simple solution, but just on a quarterly level, they would send us a master list of all the staff that are currently employed with the city, and then we would just have our staff probably at the front desk at the MAC that would just look through whoever has a membership, compare it to the master list, and if they're no longer on the master list, then we would remove their privileges. But basically, anyone can come to the MAC or the pool, say that they are a city employee. They can, if they're on the list, then we can verify that. If they've been recently hired, we can verify it either through a pay stub, if they have the city ID that full-timers get, or if they don't have any of those, we can just call HR and verify employment, and then we can create a pass for them, and then we just verify on a quarterly level if they're still employed with the city and remove them from membership so they're not continually gaining access. Obviously, there's the potential of, if somebody left employment with the city, that they would have maybe a month or so if we didn't, if that list was updated, that they'd get those benefits, but eventually, we'd be able to catch up and we'd be able to remove those privileges. But there's no way we could keep up with that out of, as the week of, if somebody were to leave the city. So there's always going to be a little delay. Obviously, if we hear about somebody leaving the city, especially within our own department, we would know. We can obviously remove those privileges, but otherwise we'd have to wait for that list from HR. As far as the eligible drop-in activities, I know there was some discussion on that at the last meeting. So this is the list that we came up with that we believe we should have included. So at the MAC, the walking track, which is already free anyway, but then just drop-in, which right now the only drop-in activities that we have at the MAC are basketball, pickleball, and volleyball. This other activities as approved by management is that sometimes we do get requests from somebody to use the court space for something different on a drop-in level. Might be color guard or something like that. And if it's really slow at the MAC, we say, sure. So that's what that is. It's just, we still allow that as drop-in to use court space for something, especially on a slow day. At the aquatic facility, there's a few more programs, but primarily lap swim and open swim. And then these are the list of those drop-in programs that currently you can't access that are just a drop-in, which is aquasize, range of motion, grown-ups and guppies, water polo. That's the drop-in water polo, drop-in, missed the P there, drop-in kayaking, and deep, yeah.
So did I.
We're always coming up with
What is
new
that?
things. Yeah, and then deep water exercise. And I have an asterisk next to that right now because basically what we're saying is that if it requires a professional instructor, that's usually where we draw the line between drop-in and where you pay an extra fee. So deep water exercise, at times we've had an additional $1 because we've had a professional certified staff that's teaching that class. Right now it's volunteer-based. So we've been allowing people to do that drop-in because we just have volunteers running it. And that's kind of because we've been really struggling to find certified staff to be able to teach some of the aqua fitness classes. Now we have a new head lifeguard, and I know that one of the goals for that position is we'd really like to get most of these fitness classes to be contract instructors that can come in and teach that, in which case that's mostly what these excluded is anything that's a contract instructor. So We like to see a lot of the aqua fitness programs with professional contracted instructors. If we were able to find those and bring them in, they would be probably excluded from that, because obviously they're, as a contractor, they're expecting to get paid for certain amounts, and we don't want to inundate that with free employees coming in and taking up those spaces when they're not paying, and the contractor is expecting to get a portion of that. But and then so non-eligible programs be any class requires professional instruction and registration, such as but not limited to contract classes, swim lessons, sport leagues, special events, facility reservations, or gate or entrance fees. So, if there's a special event at the MAC and they're charging an entrance fee for that special event, we don't want people to think that because they're an employee, they get free access to the facility all the time. It's really just for those drop-in programs. But that's basically.
And then Commissioner Case.
I put my hand down. You addressed it.
Okay.
Commissioner Schulte?
Hi there. Again, I support this. I think it's a great idea. I do have concerns a little bit about lap swim, however, and I had called earlier on that. Just in terms of, the other with the open drop-in, I think there's a little more flexibility with numbers, whereas lap swim, I think can be a little more limited and interfere with the enjoyment of the swimmers. So just wondering your thoughts on that, because you know more than I do on this subject.
That depends. But yeah, no, so after we was given the question, I had a conversation with Mike Freeman, who's our aquatics manager at the facility, to say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like, would it cause congestion during lap swim times? And the answer is really, he didn't believe it would. Primarily, one, we don't believe that we'd see a huge increase. Swimming's a specialized activity. So if you're not swimming now, just because the pass is free, if that's not your mode of exercise, hopefully we'll see some who take advantage of it. Definitely the people who already are purchasing passes will benefit from that. But they're already counted into our numbers that are using the facility regularly. But in addition to that, the busiest times at the aquatic facility for lap swim are generally like that lunch hour at noon. And then especially, he said, in the springtime, because there's other programs that are taking up some lane space as well. It gets a little busy in the evenings, like right now, this time of year. But the reality is that most other facilities at lap swim, you'll see 2-3 people sharing a lane. And we don't see a lot of that at our facility because when we feel busy, it's generally like at lunchtime today, he looked around and he's like, yeah, every lane is full with one person. And so there's kind of this luxury that he termed as luxury of thinking you get a lane to yourself. And some people like that. But I know for me, for example, if I want to avoid that, it's very easy. If I want to go swimming at 1, then all of a sudden there's 8 empty lanes. So we just have these minimal times where it's busy, but if you have the flexibility in your schedule, it's very easy to avoid those times as well. And his response was, if we have to come up with some policies to encourage lane sharing and circle swimming, where people kind of, swim on one side of the lane and, share a lane, he'd be happy to do that because that means the facility is being used, people are swimming, and that's more health in the community. But we don't, right now, we rarely see multiple people in the lane because our busiest times are generally when we have about 19 lanes that are being used.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the part-time staff, is the thinking that they will only have the pass while they're employed with the city?
Correct. So that's why if we're getting that list from HR, it's only going to be active employees. So if we get that list and they're not an active employee, they won't show up on the list, and therefore they won't be able to get a pass, or we'll remove their pass privileges.
I was just thinking for, to try and bring them back, that for the next season, it might be a nice incentive, right? If we give them an annual pass and we say, if you come back next season, your annual pass will continue, just because I know we struggle with seasonal employees, and that might just be a little bit, come on back, or 6 months after they're off the job, whatever that looks like, just to kind of incentivize
Yeah.
them.
Or if they come back, they get their pass back. So
Well, we want them to be healthy in the off season too, so
that's
they come
true.
back healthy.
Commissioner Chase's comments. I know we've had trouble recruiting seasonal employees. So when would we want this implemented so that it would be attractive for this summer's seasonal employees?
I think that's open for discussion. I mean, I would have to go through the Board of Supervisors first. So I think we were thinking if it was approved and moved forward, July 1, just because then we could start on a quarter, and that way we kind of, as the date, and then HR will send us on a quarterly, but we could, I mean, we can change that if that is the desire, but we were thinking July 1, assuming we can move forward with it.
I was just thinking it would be an attractive recruiting tool, and I know last summer, we were down quite a few seasonals who didn't apply, and positions were open, and maybe if we could sweet talk them, hey, baby, come here, guess what we're gonna give you?
No, I get it. So, I mean, we're going to start doing our recruitments, well, now, basically. And so, yes, it would be beneficial if we could offer that now. So, I mean, I think that's open for, I think the Board of Supervisors to decide if they want to implement it sooner, we could, and just change our dates to be, quarterly from that point on. But
Another suggestion, maybe for this year is like a pilot program to see if we can get those seasonal staff on board, offering the year pass just this once to see if it actually helps with recruitment in any way. So just one time, we'll see how it goes. And we could offer a year pass to everybody, but I really want to make sure we get like seasonal staff this summer in our pool.
yeah, I mean, I think the main goal is just to get it through. So whatever we think the Board of Supervisors would be willing to approve, and it might be easier to kind of go with a simpler version as the trial, right? And see, but I mean, obviously, so whatever it's up your desire to what you want to recommend as a commission, we'll bring that to the board for sure.
Comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Meyer?
I personally like the way you presented it today. I understand that it'd be a lot easier facilitating it, and you have the plan to go forward with giving it to the people that are currently employed and so forth, and the rest of it might get a little muddy. So I think it's a great start, and I think it's a great program, and hopefully we get those people healthy that are working for us and inspire people to work for us.
Yeah, thank you. And we do plan on, before we go to the Board of Supervisors, we're going to try and get HR to send out a survey to see how many people would, if a free pass was available, how many people would take advantage of it, just so we can have some, a better idea of how many people would take advantage of it. And the reality is it's probably going to be less than who said they would, but at least we'd have an idea of what intentions were.
You could get a couple votes if you put in retired employees.
Commission members?
Commission members and, no, I meant retired from the city.
I know. Commissioner Chase?
All right, I'm going to make one last pitch for the part-time employees to give them that year pass because they don't get those other benefits, correct? Like there's no health insurance, there's no retirement, like there's really not a lot in there for our part-time staff. And if we can give them just like a hint of a benefit, if you're full-time staff, you're going to be here. And so it's okay if you have the pass that gets checked every quarter or whatever, but to get a part-time employee is really tough because you're not offering the benefits. And I just really want to see them get something, So one last push, I would love to see that, an annual pass for the part-time employees to kind of keep them coming back. I don't know if it would help, but there's just not a lot out there for part-timers.
Can I just jump in? Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I do want to point out, we do have some part-time employees that actually do work year-round. So we have, as long as they stay under 1,039 hours within that time period, they're fine. Like we have a couple staff at the admin office that works 20 hours or less. We have a staff person at the cemetery, 20, So we do have a lot of part-time employees that are there year-round and would have the ongoing benefit of that as long as they're employed as well. It just might be kind of hard to differentiate who, and I don't know. We could definitely try if we can try to wrap our head around it. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. But when we have, up to 200 seasonals and they're all working different schedules, it might be kind of difficult to figure out who had the year and who didn't. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. And I don't want to inadvertently leave someone out.
Absolutely.
So let's, like an HR question, is there a difference between a part-time staff and a seasonal staff?
They're essentially the same.
Commissioner Schulte?
Well, although part-time, I mean, if it's year-round part-time, it's, so seasonal is within, you know, a summer season, so.
It's more of a term. We always say seasonal because that's sort of the culture of what we do, but HR usually refers to them as part-time employees or hourly. They're at will, they're 1,039 hours. Yeah, all part-time
No, I'm
seasonal
just,
employees
but I'm
have to be under
thinking like summer
1,039.
job, which is different. That's seasonal, right? Okay.
And we do hire some seasonals, some part-time, you know, off-season. Not everybody works April through October. Because we do have year-round opportunities. Like at the MAC, we have to keep that running year-round. If we have park maintenance in the shoulder seasons as well. So not everybody is working that traditional April through October within the department. While that's the majority of our seasonal staff, it's not all of the seasonal staff.
So for clarity, then the pass you have, if you'd have the pass while you're employed.
That is correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Chase?
One more time. Do the part-time staff get any other benefits or at all?
Yeah.
Well, we'll discuss that under item 5C, but we're hoping to get them additional compensation than they're already having as well. And was one of your proposals for the budget, and I can give you an update on that. So we are definitely trying to be more competitive with our hourly rate, which is a benefit.
In addition to that, we are working on just, these are minor things, but just kind of some perks are working for us. And we've talked about working with HR and the other directors about providing job shadowing, because we felt like one of the best benefits we have of working in the Parks and Rec department is that you have access in the city to a dozen other departments that are wide range of skills. And so if you work for us, you now have access to the police department or the sheriff's office, the fire department, HR, public works, all these different finance. And so we talked to the other directors about, you know, for a day, if one of our staff wanted to shadow you and get some experience and see if this is something they were interested in when they're going to college, and they were all very open to that idea. So we're trying to provide a little bit of education, can work for us. You kind of get to learn about what's out there and see what field you might want to go into, especially for our part-timers that are either high school or college aged.
Comment on this item?
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. On the line of incentives was brought up in that open mixed meeting was a consideration for college credits towards or work experience credits towards. And it wasn't really gone into too much, but I'm thinking a lot of kids are looking now at different kind of considerations as far as employment. And to me, anything you can get a kid into school about or to go to things like your lifeguard programs or your first aid programs or your child guidance or supervision courses, that if they're into something like that, you want to encourage it, perhaps those things can be considered through their specific interests. Like I was early childhood development, it would have been great at that time to have gone to first aid courses or lifeguard courses that would supplement some of those observations or supervision situations that I was looking to be in, but I changed course. But so to me, if you knew the person's interests as far as education or furthering, because there's a lot of need for children's supervision here at the center with the after school and different programs. So I think scholarship towards or something towards a course, if it relates to what they're doing here as supervising or whatever, would be helpful. But I also really think they have so few benefits through the job and showing up on days that are heck for most people to even get to work. Just want incentives as much as possible for the part-time or the people that are just feeling it out. And to appreciate them and show them that they're appreciated, because the pay is not, they could go to Starbucks. You're losing them. So thank you very much.
All right, at this time, oh, another public comment?
Sorry, no, it's just, I was realizing I just want to get on the record. For Dan Harp here, Recreation Superintendent. I was looking at this list, and I think it was all assumed, but I left it off this list accidentally for the aquatic facility that does include the fitness center. So
Okay.
you'd be able to drop and use the fitness center as well.
Well, I
Wanna
think
make sure
would
that
be
was-
attractive to a lot of the employees.
Yes, and the fitness center isn't used a lot, so that would actually be really great.
Didn't we upgrade the fitness center and get some new equipment for it recently?
New floor.
Okay.
So equipment, hopefully, future coming, but we have a new floor at least.
Hey, baby steps. Okay. All right, on that, okay. All right, I'm going to entertain a motion. Would you please make it, Commissioner Chase?
Thank you. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the creation of a drop-in incentive as presented, and strongly hint that I really wanted the part-time people to get a long-term benefit. So is that can that be included in the motion?
Ben, is that okay?
Sorry, Ben. It's after my bedtime. One more time, I'll do it right. I swear, legal people.
So you're withdrawing the other motion?
I withdraw my other motion with my silliness on there. I apologize. Seriously this time, move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the creation of a drop-in incentive as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and hopefully we can attract some talented people with that. We're going to move on now to let me learn how to speak. To agenda item 5C, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding fiscal year 2023-2024 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department budget. Jennifer Budge. Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to take a really brief moment to update you where we're at in the budget process and how things are progressing. I call it budget season, and it's a lot. It's not the most fun task, but we're getting through it, and I just wanted to just take a quick moment to thank you and to thank all the staff for all their hard work. For each of these projects or staff that we're proposing, it requires a ton of paperwork and backup that I don't even bring here, and we have to submit that to finance. So it's a whole job in itself, and Dan and his team, Dave Navarro and his team as well, have just done an amazing job. So I do want to thank them for that. If we could focus on the late material that I provided you, I think that would be the best way to get you up to date on where we're at. So far we've had a lot of meetings, internal citywide as far as staff goes. We've had our internal finance committee, which consists of the city manager, the deputy city manager, the HR director, someone from the DA's office, and they review all of these items, and we basically have to present them to them, and they evaluate the funding strategy. And we're lucky because we can be very creative. We're not 100% reliant on the general fund. We do have access to other funds to support some of what we're proposing, and we try to do our best to provide the lowest impact to the general fund as possible. We understand that with taxpayer money, we're just trying not to overspend that in any way possible. So we try to keep that in mind throughout everything that we do. If we could start with the staffing request. So I gave you a sheet that looks like that it has the different color columns on it, and I can kind of walk you through that. On the left are the positions. We'll start first. New FTE, that's a full-time equivalent. So that would be one full-time person, 40 hours a week, year-round with health benefits. And these are the positions we requested. One full-time park ranger position. We were proposing funding that through quality of life maintenance, quality of life open space, and then you'll see IAF fund. This is something newly available, we hope, to us. It's the indigent fund. And I met with the health director, and we talked about the possibility of having the health department utilizing the indigent fund to help support funding a park ranger. Previously, we had 30% of that position proposed from the general fund, and this way it would take that general fund allocation away. She's really supportive of that. Our park rangers interact with unhoused folks every day. They provide outreach, education, support materials for that community. The health department really is focused on education and outreach for that population as well. We think this will be a really great partnership. So this is also something that obviously the Board of Supervisors has to approve, but that's what where we're at with that position. Also, one full-time park maintenance project coordinator. That would be funded entirely through reallocation of existing contractual service funds that we have. We have tried really hard to outsource some of our landscaping, maintenance, snow removal, some of the medians, and we've really struggled. Private industry is struggling with staffing just like we are, and trying to have some just a dedicated staff person that would oversee the inmates and have a crew themselves to do some of this work. And it would be regular, dependent workforce that we could count on. We've been really hit and miss. Some of the contractors that we've had have been amazing. We've have other facilities that we tried to contract out some of our snow removal this year. We've had to close those facilities because they never even showed up because they just couldn't keep up with. Obviously, it was an exemplary year with snow, but we've been hit and miss with the contractual services as well. So that would be, no impact to the general fund. Then a new park maintenance worker for open space, entirely funded through the open space quality of life fund. And then adding a recreation coordinator youth. All these positions we talked about previously at the Parks and Recreation Commission, but and then that one we would offer up some of our seasonal dollars toward a full-time position, so we would have a dedicated person to help Andrew Menendez and the youth program, freeing up some of his time to dedicate more labor and support for our adaptive programming, which is something that we've been trying to grow. The Internal Finance Committee did not recommend funding the senior park maintenance coordinator, but of the two park maintenance positions that we proposed, the one that they're recommending was the higher priority for the department, so we feel like we can live with that, and we recognize that there's a lot of other funding needs throughout the entire organization, not just the department, so we definitely want to make sure that we're not asking for everything and we're trying to share in that. And then wanting to reclass our office specialist to a senior office specialist, we would fund that part of that increase to the landscape maintenance district. They process all of the invoices and the contractual services we have for Schultz Ranch Maintenance District, so that would be an appropriate use of those funds. So no impact to the general fund for that reclassification. And since I've been here, we've added 10 full-time equivalents to the department, and the staff just is in real need of additional clerical support as we've grown as a department. So the quality of work and the level of work that this individual is doing, I think, warrants that reclassification for sure. Any questions on the new full-time and reclass before I move on to the next section? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Whitefield?
Just a general question. I think I know the answer, but I'm assuming these numbers are total compensation. Does that include benefits?
They would include benefits in the total, the far right column in the pink.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then these requests, the seasonal requests, each one of these has a revenue offset. So there's some kind of revenue coming in to help support that ask. The first one is the one we talked about previously, the hourly salary range increase. We were recommending a $2 an hour increase per hour for all seasonals. The Internal Finance Committee came back and said, we're going to recommend $1.50 an hour. We still think that's great, and if that can get through, would be a huge win for us in helping compete with the public and private sector for seasonal staff. The outdoor program budget, we were requesting a half-time staff person, so 20 hours a week dedicating toward our outdoor recreation program. We started that program, Dan created that, and from a generous grant from Carson Tahoe to purchase equipment. He's been operating that along with the other recreation staff. Internal Finance was just saying, can we just keep that the status quo? We won't be able to grow that right now. It's not that we will get rid of the program. It'll just have to fall on the existing staff. But as far as the other priorities go, we felt comfortable with that moving forward. We would love to grow that, and we'll just try to figure out how we can do that next year. The rifle and pistol range, we were requesting additional funding for range safety officers, for seasonal range safety officers. We requested 33,000, they're recommending 16,000, so half of our request, but that would still be able to keep, we'll probably have to reduce some of the range hours because of that, and we'll bring that to the board, what that would look like, but it wouldn't have to be so significant as what we thought before. We have a lot of volunteer range safety officers, but it's a really tough job. It's a tough volunteer post to have. You're out in the elements. It's obviously dangerous, but we have probably a really small core group that's there, but we just didn't have the amount of volunteers that we really anticipated from the range task force to be able to keep that as operational. While we do have a really great volunteer force there, it's just not enough to cover the hours that the board wanted established for the public. And then we added another incentive, so a swim instructor incentive pay. This is another great creative idea from the recreation team. So if you're a lifeguard and you're teaching swim lessons, the hours that you're teaching swim lessons, you would get a higher rate of pay for that lesson instruction, which is a great incentive to be able to do that. And if we really feel like that the revenue offset for that would be, quadruple that cost, because we'll be able to offer more lessons. So there is a significant revenue offset for that one. But most people would just want to be a lifeguard and not do the extra work for teaching swim lessons. But we really need a more robust swim lesson program. So it's a great incentive for them. Any question on the seasonal requests? Okay. And then the supply requests are really just increase in cost for chemicals and utilities, those kinds of items that with supply costs just going up across the country would make it so we can adequately do that. You'll see the arts and culture event budget is crossed out. It's already in this fiscal year in the redevelopment budget, so we just withdrew that, and she'll be able to operate out of that existing fund. Any question on that page? I know it's a lot, so feel free to stop me. Then we'll go over to the capital requests, which is the rest of your packet. And the general fund requests, if you look at the notes column, the majority of items that are crossed off, we've pretty much been able to find a different way to fund that item without requesting the general fund, which is great. So for example, number 1 under general fund requests, the AD for Centennial Park, we're going to work with our 1% because it would support those CTA tournaments that we have up there. So we can utilize that fund for that. The park ranger uniforms will be able to cover through quality life, open space, and maintenance. IFC did recommend cutting item number 6, materials for the bridge crossings for the disc golf park, but there's still disc golf materials and supplies under item number 5, and then we added the entry and exit gates are still within the budget, so it's just a minor reduction there. And then we were able to fund the pallet storage racks within this fiscal year from quality life maintenance. General fund, and then you'll see all these items here. We talked about Dave Navarro went to the Youth Sports Association to see if they could help supplement the netting for the backstops. YSA is open to doing that, so we would split the cost with them, which is really generous. The asphalt pathway repairs, we have funding in this current budget to continue to work on those items. The park ranger truck wraps, what we would do instead of asking for it all from the general fund is we would just divide it between quality of life open space, quality of life maintenance, and the general fund. So it would be a lower impact to the general fund. The corporate yard building improvements for building number 7 was not recommended for approval. And then the turf reduction at College Parkway and Airport Road wasn't recommended for approval. Then moving on to the fleet, those 3 fleet items were the top priority from park maintenance, so we're really happy with that. I know a lot of things are crossed out, but that was the top priority. Those were the top 3 from park maintenance, so they were pleased with that. The ADA door retrofit at the MAC, we've already been able to complete that, and it's operational this fiscal year, so we won't need to do that next year. We were able to use quality life capital funds existing for that. And then you'll see number 3 is a little bit different than what you saw last time. We have been working with the Culture and Tourism Authority about a potential item that would provide some bonding for significant capital improvements at Centennial Park. So we will have an item at, I believe it's the April 10th CTA meeting, Culture and Tourism Authority meeting, to discuss the possibility of having what they previously were making payments toward the V&T bond, which just was paid off, of considering doing a new bond for improvements in Centennial Park. So the vision is to take Upper Centennial and make it into artificial turf. We would also probably do a landscape buffer to help reduce some of the wind and the impacts, and then some drainage improvements up there. So we'll be discussing that at the April 10th Culture and Tourism Authority meeting. But basically, the CTA utilizing room tax would pay the annual payoff for the bond. So we're estimating about $400,000 a year, which they're currently paying now in their budget, and we're hoping that would continue. But the Board of Supervisors would have to approve that as part of the budget. And so if that is approved, what we're recommending is we would do an updated master plan for Centennial Park, and then we would pay for the design for those improvements out of quality of life. So that way, if the bond money was available, all of the money would go to on-the-ground improvements to improve those fields. Right now, we were looking at a temporary Band-Aid, which only would give us about 3 to 5 years, and that would have been about $75,000 a field to laser level the fields, bring in soil, and do that improvements. But if you've been up there at any time, it's so windy, and the soil just, all the dirt is flying up, and you end up, eating it, literally, even if you're in the bleachers. So we'd love to be able to have artificial turf at those upper fields, which would make almost year-round play. I mean, unless there's snow, but you'd get more play in the shoulder seasons. It would bring in tourism and more opportunities for year-round play. So we're hoping the CTA might be on board for considering that. So we'll bring that to the April 10th CTA meeting, and I can report back to you and let you know the progress on that. But it's definitely in discussion right now. Nothing's been approved, and then the Board of Supervisors would have to sign off on that as well. Let me see if there's any other change. And then there's no other changes on the capital items. So I recognize that's so much to absorb, but let me know if you have any questions on where we're at right now. The tentative budget will be presented to the Board of Supervisors on April 20th. I think it would be really wonderful if we had someone speaking in support, especially for the positions that we're proposing. I think the capital items, it's pretty clear, but the positions, I think we could really use your support perhaps at the public meeting if you consider that.
Jen, would you like Kurt and I to be at that meeting? Because I can certainly be there if you'd like me.
Yeah, I think if you wanted maybe to consider in your motion, to identify someone to speak on behalf of the Park Commission, I think that would be great. Whoever's available and comfortable with doing that, it might be a long meeting, I just want to warn you in advance, but we would really appreciate the support, and I think the Board of Supervisors, it's important for them to hear how important these are. It'll start at 8:30. I don't know what time the budget will be heard. We've had some years where it's like after lunch and it's the whole afternoon. We've had some where it's kind of the whole day. So. Absolutely. They do take public comment at the beginning, so if that's more convenient for everybody.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Walt has a question for you, and then Commissioner Whitfield.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Not a question so much as a consideration, because I know the Centennial Park, the design is just, in the beginnings, but you mentioned artificial turf, which then just sparked everything that I had, because I know Centennial is not part of YSA, the agreement, correct?
It's not, it's adult fields.
Right, but the artificial is so needed for youth soccer. artificial turf is. You know, in all honesty, it's hard. There's only one artificial turf in Reno, which is an hour away. And so, you know, and soccer is a year-round sport and everywhere besides Northern Nevada. And so, with that, I would encourage you to, if that is going to be the only artificial turf, that you maybe open it up so there can be some practice for YSA, or at least for soccer, you know, in the winter months as well.
And we haven't started design at all. This is just really a line item right now, like a placeholder. Should the Culture and Tourism Authority and the Board of Supervisors approve that as a concept and a project? But I absolutely agree with you. We need more artificial turf, especially up there. But it provides more opportunities not only for tourism, but for the local community. Obviously, the CTA is very focused on tourism, and that's where the room tax dollars come in. So tourism potential is our focus. We are looking for potentially doing a field at Governor's right now. I think Field 3, and considering that might be artificial turf, we're looking right now into some things because we have a lot of drainage issues. We have a lot of concerns there. So part of what we're looking at right now with staff is potentially doing one there. But it's about $1 million a field. So I just want to put us all in reality. You do have a lot less maintenance and a lot less water use, but there is still maintenance required. And there's certain equipment that we would have to purchase to be able to take care of artificial turf. So we don't currently have that. We are meeting with WNC, I'll just let you know, in a couple weeks to talk about their field and trying to increase some use on that field as well, which is artificial turf. So I think that's a great opportunity, but you do have to build it into your budget. So about every 10 years or so, you have to replace that field or sections of that field. So you really have to have like some depreciation built into your plan if you're going to convert from regular turf to artificial.
Jace, and then Vice Chair Meyer? You're done? Oh, Whitfield, I'm sorry. Dave, I am so sorry.
No worries, thank you. Jen, just a curiosity question. What's the makeup of the Internal Finance Committee?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I missed your question.
I'm just curious about the makeup of the Internal Finance Committee. What
Oh,
comprises that committee?
Oh, it's the city manager, the deputy city manager, the CFO, the HR director, and then a representative from the DA's office.
Speaking on behalf of the YSA, I think that they would probably want to expand that not just for soccer, but for baseball and football also. Yeah, I mean, youth sports is youth sports, and any way we can get them, especially because of this year, it's just been pretty tremendous. They haven't been able to start a lot of their seasons because they can't get on the fields yet, and that would definitely make a difference. So, as far as artificial turf fields.
Want to continue?
That's really all I wanted to highlight. And
Okay.
then perhaps if you consider providing a representative for the board meeting to speak on behalf of the Park Commission, that would be amazing. April 20th. So that'll be the tentative budget. The final budget goes back in May, but usually there's not many changes, at least from our perspective, from the two. So that's where we could really use the encouragement to
He's
the
making
board.
his excuses for not being there, and they're valid.
Oh, goodness, no.
That is, okay.
We'll just make him call in.
All right, do we have any public comment on this? Come on down, sir.
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Chair, Commissions. With all due respect to those that are supporters of artificial turf, my brother and I just had a conversation about such. New science is showing that athletes are suffering from some degrees of health issue and more injuries related to different field uses. And each field is certainly different, and there's many different companies out there. But they're finding that the wear and tear, if you watch a game, you'll see a powder of such go up sometimes when a player goes down. And that's not the soil, that's the plastic that's going up into the atmosphere, into the air around them. So it was an interesting thought that this came up today, because my brother and I talked about a football game months ago when this came up. I said, how's that artificial turf? And the high school, you'll have feedback from there because they've had the course or the field for several years now. And the maintenance of that is specific to the type it's made and the foundation it's made and the area it's in. It's just going to take, I think if you're going to do that, you got to do your homework. I didn't go into it much more than my brother and I talked at that level of science or understanding that we both had. And it was an interesting conversation, but one I wouldn't have expected had it just not come up. Another thing that's a bit of a curious situation for me, because Parks Recreations meet. This is not a joint open space meeting, yet you're considering funding for rangers that are going to cover both. I'm looking at the list of parks, and that's not including the open space, which is acres and acres and acres. Our parks are acres and acres. I don't think just one's going to do it, and I think with my experience today here at the park, and a couple of days ago when I was walking towards the other side of, towards Walgreen, I was watching kids jump over the fence into the pavilion. And I just yelled no. I didn't have to give any explanation, just an adult yelling no, 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 from way away, 100 and something yards probably away. I'm starting to yell as I'm walking quietly. I'm not running towards it. I'm not being aggressive. I'm not being, but the one threw their skateboard out, climbed back out, then another skateboard, well, before he climbed out, he threw 2 skateboards over, but he was already inside. The second one was ready to climb over, and the other was going to hand him his board. So on park supervision, you know, you've talked about you can't get people to follow the dog laws or the ordinance. Well, how are you going to get any enforcement? There's no sense making any rules, regulations, or anything unless you're going to have enforcement. And if, in fact, you're splitting your rangers up to try to cover parks, all of these other areas, and I'm real concerned about Prison Hill personally. That's a off the agenda thing, and it's not in your agenda, but you brought up open space and money for it, and money divided between open space specifically relating to rangers. You share equipment for things that you can share equipment. That's great. You don't have to duplicate. You can share. But people, I don't think we should. You should have it set. We are going to put rangers that are designated to the parks, or we're going to part some other supervision and have it, okay, rangers are needed in open space, let them find that funding. Let them hire those people. Parks and recreation should be separate. When a person like myself comes in and goes, wait a minute, how come I'm worrying about funding open space here today? Or considering it even, when I know that our parks need supervision and observation. I mean, what happened to me today was very minimal as to what it could have been. Had I not had these safety glasses on, could have been a whole different story when I came in today. I was shaken, yes, but mostly frustrated because I couldn't do anything to those kids. Even had I been able to catch up with them, I'm an adult. Were I to take on those kids with a bad shoulder anyway, it wouldn't have come out good, and I'm not an aggressive or assertive person and things, but I do protect myself. And had I had the opportunity to stop that young man from shooting at me, I would have taken him on to stop it, but he drove off, luckily, or they drove off. So I want supervision considered for parks. I want rangers considered for parks. By the time you get somebody off the hill, the sheriffs came right away. But are they supposed to supplement our parks with observation and enforcement? I don't think so. We need them in other areas. So I'm sorry if I'm raining on your idea of artificial turf, because I know it's easier in some ways. but science behind it is still developing. And unless you're up on it, you know exactly what you're getting into. It's like picking the wrong roof for the weather and the climate that you're in, even the foundation. So thank you very much for your patience, but you stirred me up, and I have lots of questions for the end of the day, but I know you've got a long one here, so I'll try to make it short. Thank you.
Okay, I gotcha. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department budget as discussed, and further motion that a representative from the commission be present to help support the staffing needs.
Are you going to name said representative? Or do you just want somebody to show up?
That need to be in? That doesn't need to be in.
Okay.
We'll work with who's available.
So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you so much, everybody. That was a great presentation, Jen. All right, we are now moving on to item 6, the director's report from Jen. Jen, please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Vacant positions, we have a full-time park maintenance worker position available. All of our seasonal positions are open. If you want to work for us in the summer, it's a great place to work, super fun. Hopefully, we will have, hopefully you might get a pass, and hopefully you might have a pay increase. Just hang on, we're almost there. I did want to update you real quick on the legislature. I pulled up some of the bills I'm tracking to just kind of keep you informed. There is still a bill for employment of offenders, so that could potentially impact our inmate program. There's a proposal to pay inmates minimum wage, which would effectively kill our inmate program. It's deeper than that. There's a lot of issues. How we utilize inmates is very different than a lot of other entities, so it's kind of a complicated issue. But that's that's SB 187. There is a couple bills regarding homeless, SB 142 and SB 155. We're actively talking to other agencies about those, and hopefully there's some amendments so we have some more flexibility with those items. I know the Board of Supervisors has discussed those too, I believe. There's AB 164 about outdoor recreation, which is great. It's funding grants that the city would be eligible for outdoor recreation, which is wonderful. There's also some items on restricted use pesticides that we've been watching, AB 162. And then there's urban and community forestry grants that goes through Nevada Division of Forestry. We've applied for those before. I'm really hoping those make it through because it will be great for our urban forest. We could replace a lot of the trees that have been damaged, like in recent storms, and help support even community education programs, usually through those grants, which are, that one is AB 131. There's also Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program, AB 128, which is wonderful. There's one regarding historical markers, and then I forgot to note the other one too. There's one about wildlife crossings that I've been watching too, and I think there's some great opportunities in the area, especially connecting some of our open spaces across Highway 50 and providing safe passage for wildlife, but you can also have dual use for recreation access across or under, significant highway corridors, which would be a great potential. So those are just some highlights we're watching. But if you have any questions on those, I'd be happy to look into it, and then I can keep you updated on how those shake out. But that's all I have. Oh,
Is it okay, Madam Chair? Just to let you know, SB 142 did have a huge amendment, and I think everything was cut out, so.
oh, good. Thank you. I haven't seen that yet.
Jen, would you mind addressing the safety inspection at Sonoma today? I was really excited to see that.
I forgot. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So our risk manager, Cecilia Meyer, she's wonderful. They go around and they have a safety committee citywide, and it comprises of a few different staff and different departments. Includes the fire department, someone from our facilities management. I don't know, there's what, 8 or 10 people on that, I think now. And they go around to every different city building. They do an annual inspection. They look at things, and then they provide us a list of things we need to improve, whether it's like an exit sign light that's out or if there's a trip hazard or whatever. But it's just a fresh set of eyes, really. And then Cecilia's been great. She just added our parks to her list. So today was the first park they went to. They went to Sonoma Park, and I think they also went to Roscold Park today. But only found a couple minor things, which is great, but it's a good fresh set of eyes and another way to look at our park and have different people looking at it in a different way. But they had a great experience today and thought it was so well kept up. So it's a good opportunity to thank the park maintenance staff too for keeping up on it.
How's the cleanup from all these storms going with like the downed branches and repairs of everything under the sun?
It's a lot. It's pretty significant. So we have, the staff has gone through and taken photos and documented everything just like they would even if we had a declared disaster, which we haven't. You can after the fact. We definitely have a significant amount of damage. There's like cart paths at the golf course that have completely been undermined, which is significant. They're all asphalt, so just that alone is very costly. The whole river corridor, a lot of our trails, just very muddy. And please, before you go out on a trail, especially right now, if the ground's really saturated, please don't. Just stay off of it for now. Try to stick to the pavement, stick to the concrete, or stick to any ground that's just not saturated right now because it's really destroying our trails. But the river corridor in particular is really significant. We did have a lot of, erosion and drainage issues throughout the whole park system, specifically Upper Centennial, which is one of the areas we've identified. We had in 2017, 2 of the tennis courts were completely destroyed, and we never were able to work with FEMA to get those replaced. We do have a plan to get those taken care of, through alternative funding. But we have a lot. The downed trees, the flooding, our park maintenance staff were working with Public Works, 12-hour shifts around the clock to mitigate flooding. They really did an amazing job. I will say the staff was just awesome. But we do have a lot of trees that we lost. We lost, I think, 4 to 6 at the golf course alone. We lost a couple at Mills. We lost several along the river corridor. So we're still assessing all of that damage and documenting it and reporting that to the city manager and trying to come up with a plan because it is something that we probably can't absorb within our current budget. So we will have to work with that. However, the river corridor is going to be really, really tricky because they're predicting more flooding in the Carson River in June with all the snow melt. So do you go in now and start making repairs, you wait, or you do it again later? So we're kind of going to be on a wait and see situation, at least for the river corridor. And then I should note too, I think we emailed it out to everybody, but the staff was notified about a significant grant from SNPLMA, the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, to redo Riverview Park as, trailhead improvements, so new restroom, and also corridor improvements. So you'll see that moving forward, and our open space team will head that up, which will be great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the report. Let's move on to item 7, update from the Carson City School Board Liaison. Commissioner Walt.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. So we've had a lot going on. Obviously, it's budget season for the school district as well. And the school district's budget is being worked on, negotiations with all of the unions as well, but it is hard to do a budget until the state decides on what they're going to be doing for the school district as well. We're hoping that what the governor is proposing actually for the schools actually moves forward, because then that will alleviate staffing, problems that the school district is going to have if it doesn't. Superintendent Fueling is very involved in the legislature, and he's tracking several bills. And then he also presented, what was it? I think it was 2 weeks ago, he presented, all of the school districts were asked to present to legislature on what their budget needs are and where we stand as well, and where we are now and where, it could be if the funding is not there, and it will be detrimental, I know, for our school district. So, but then on the note of the legislature, I wanted to let you know on March 15th, Carson High School senior Stella Thornton, I don't know if any of you read that in the Carson Now, but she presented SB 80. She is with the youth legislature, and SB 80 is clear guidelines and procedures for managing students' traumatic brain injury and concussions. So she did very well, and it will be work session at the Senate Education tomorrow at 1 p.m. in room 2134. So good luck to her tomorrow. Also, Carson High School HOSA students. HOSA is the Health Occupation Students of America. They competed last month. 4 Carson High School students won state, and 29 of them qualified to attend the International Leadership Conference in June in Dallas, Texas. So that was huge. It was a huge amount. So that was very good. And then also Carson City School District is hosting a career fair Thursday, April 13th from 2 to 4 p.m. And this is at the school district office. This is for any entry-level, part-time, and full-time employees. So that includes bus drivers. We're in desperate need of bus drivers. Desperate need. What's that? Yes. Yeah. And so we are in need of that. Cooks, bakers, paraprofessionals, custodians, groundkeepers, substitutes, teachers. So all of that will be offered at the career fair on April 13th from 2 to 4 at the Carson City School District.
Can we maybe work out a deal with the school district and they can buy discounted passes for their employees? Just gonna throw that out into the universe.
Dan's face.
Joint use agreement discussion when we get back to that.
I was going to mention that when we were discussing, I'm like, could we have that as part of the joint use agreement with the school district? But
The
I didn't go
superintendent
there.
asked us to come back in 6 months and we'll discuss the joint use agreement. So I said,
right.
okay. He was getting settled, so.
Yes. Tomorrow at 1 in room 2134. And it is the Senate Education work session.
Okay. We'll move to 7B, and I have to confess, I probably missed the last meeting. I need to find the schedule of the meetings so I can attend them. Do you know where I would find that, Jen? And then I promise I won't miss any more. I couldn't find it. Maybe I wasn't looking correctly, or just looking too hard.
I think it's typically the third Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m., but
Third Wednesday of the month?
I
Okay.
can double check that. And if you're not able to attend, perhaps one of the other board members would be able to go. I know there's been some interest to help pitch in, so it's not all on one
Well,
person.
and it's just not,
It's,
well, right. But I guess my question is, if somebody else wanted to go, they could go.
oh, absolutely.
yeah,
And they
so-
meet at the Wanganema House. It's
Right.
open to everybody. We definitely encourage that participation. And then former Commissioner Wilkie, she is a new board member, so
Okay.
she's been going. So if we need to touch base with her to report back or something
Okay,
like that, I
so-
think we can all tag team to try to
Okay.
make our
Yes.
presence available.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
All right.
If you have not joined the Parks Foundation, I encourage you to do so.
All right. Do any of the other commissioners have any announcements? Pickleball?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know you've all been missing the pickleball reports.
No, we haven't. Yes, we have.
So here goes. We held an intro to pickleball class at the MAC on Saturday, the 25th. We had 54 new students wanting to learn how to play pickleball, and we had 27 volunteers teaching. So it was a very successful event.
Nice.
The majority of the class asked for a follow-up class, and we have that currently scheduled for April 15th at the MAC. Going to run from 11 to 2 o'clock. Thank you to Dan and Scott for that. Our Spring Dinks and Drinks Tournament is April 22nd and 23rd. That's a Saturday and Sunday at the MAC again, starting at 9 in the morning. And those will probably run through the afternoon. And if you just like to see some people having fun playing pickleball and competing for little pieces of tin, that's your opportunity to do that. There's no charge to attend for spectators. We also have 2 level up camps scheduled at the Mills Park Court on June 6th and 7th. These are going to be 4 professional instructors and hopefully 32 attendees. We have 2 levels of camp. Half the camp will be intermediate level players and this will be our first advanced level camp. So that should be a lot of fun. I want to say a special thank you to Parks and Rec and the foundation for co-sponsoring these events that allows us to raise the funds for our courts at Mills Park. We use those funds to go to maintenance and improvements at the park, and we really appreciate your efforts on our behalf for that. Final item is not really pickleball. I just want to say how big a fan I am of our parks director and her staff. I think we saw from Dan Arp tonight just an example of the excellence and the effort that goes into their work and their devotion to our community. And I think we're very fortunate to have them. And I'd just like to give them some props. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Following up on that, I was going to ask, do you guys ever sleep after listening to that report? You do so much with you know, and we're very lucky to have you and your staff, Jen. Okay. Anything else? Janet, you want to say something? You're giving me the look.
Some of the changes the Board of Supervisors made to things that we sent to them, what kind of feedback do we get back that shows those changes officially? Because the appeal, I mean, you know, it's not as comprehensive or even maybe as official as it could be.
Are you talking about the dog policy?
That's one.
Yeah, so I provided, at the last meeting, I provided you a full packet of the final approval that the board had.
Oh, that
And
was,
I brought that to you at the last meeting.
okay. I must
But I
have my-
can go over it with you separately if you
No,
want me to.
I got that. I didn't know how the timing went.
Yeah.
Um,
So the
but-
board approved, we've brought the dog policy back to the Board of Supervisors twice now. They wanted us to hold off on Mills Park until the Mills Park master plan was
Right.
approved. So we brought back the dog policy, I think it was the first meeting in March, I can't remember the date. And they amended that so Mills Park will be on leash now. And then once we construct the off-leash park, we need to have the funding for that first. That area would be off-leash. But then they also amended Steinheimer Park to be off-leash.
mhm. Okay. All right.
So that wasn't in their approval the first time, and then
And it came-
Steinheimer got
And you gave
thrown back
us,
in.
you gave us the final.
Yeah, I can send that back to you if you don't have that.
Okay. But there was something else more recent that we submitted to them and they made changes in that too. Does anybody?
Mills Park, the
Was it
Mills
Mills
Park
Park?
master plan.
Master plan, is that what you're
okay.
talking about?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's still up in the air?
The Board of Supervisors approved the Mills Park master plan. It included the connector road for Foley's Forest Lane.
And that was the thing you didn't want, huh?
It was the connector road, and there was a lot of discussion about that and what design considerations should that move forward with. Obviously, there's not funding for that right now. It'd be millions of dollars. It would take, some funding allocation and some planning, but through design, they talked about traffic calming and different design components and things they would all like to see. And I think we're all sort of in agreement with that it's not to be, a pass-through road and some operational considerations, but we would work with someone to design that. But It is in the plan, but there's no funding for that
I see.
component
Okay.
right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think, are we on agenda item 8? I guess this is a request for information. If we could get like a presentation or something from the volunteer coordinator and what she's working on, and like if she's identified any gaps and needs, and you know, how we in the community can help either connect her with folks we know, or what we can do to help fill in for the volunteer roles as needed.
Absolutely. Do you want that for the joint meeting? That would be our next meeting
Yeah, does she do volunteer coordination for both parks and open space?
for the entire department.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
then yeah, that's great.
Okay. I think we have a park ranger presentation scheduled for that as well, so it'd probably be appropriate.
Other members' announcements or requests? Then let's go to number 8, future agenda items. Who's got one? You just gave it to us?
Yeah.
Any other future agenda items? Okay. What? All right.
Can we make it just a standing agenda item to update on the parks flooding weather issue? I don't know what exactly
Damage,
to call it.
weather
The
damage?
damage, yeah, and what
I'll
that
add
looks
it to
like.
my director's
Okay.
report, so that way
It's just
we
in
can
there.
always talk about it, yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. No others? Then let's move on to agenda item 9. Is there any public comment? Mr. French?
Chair and Commissioners. Denny French, Carson City. I'd like to suggest, just my observation, I'd like to have the legislative updates and also the emergency that the state might contribute to any damages of the parks or whatever they're able to. And a consideration that there is a AB 221 that relates to insects, just for your knowledge. And what they're hoping to do is to promote certain butterflies, certain bees and insects as endangered species. And as there are plants in the parks, we should consider maybe making up for some of the lost spaces that we've just recently lost to development, to incorporate areas that consider insect life. So, you know, whatever you plant besides turf, artificial turf. So thank you as far as a consideration. And I do want to report something about the park. And I think it's just the best place, because I have to call you and then have to go through people. And you might know, there's a place by your pickleball courts that's up towards the aquatic area. And it's at the outside end of the fence going north. And it looks like it's a sinkhole. I don't know if it's a leaky pipe that's dropping the ground out from under it, but there's a nice big hole about like this. And it had a pretty good depth to it. And I know you're going to have an activity there, and I thought perhaps I might let you know right now. Otherwise, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other public comment? Come on down.
Robin Orloff, and I want to thank you all again. My concerns about the public comment, I left the room because I thought we were going to the minutes, and I came back and we were still talking about public comment. So I'm not sure exactly what was discussed, but I'd like to say that I'm not targeting you, this commission. You've been nothing but wonderful and warm, and whenever I speak up, there's eye contact and interest, and I appreciate that. And in one meeting, the chairman even came out to my husband and myself to ask if we were waiting for an agenda item. It was during a recess because we hadn't come up to speak yet. And we really appreciated that. And it turned out that that particular item had been taken off that night, which is fine. We just had come in late. So you're nothing but responsive. I really appreciate that. But what I'm doing, I go to these meetings and the open space meetings, Board of Supervisors and planning. Those are the most important to me. And I just, again, am trying to figure out why the meetings are not more consistent like they were before 2019. I talked about that, but I had left my papers in the car. So I just wanted to read what the protocol was back then for the Board of Supervisors, and that's who supposedly we're modeling ourselves after now. And it says, each is called to order will provide at least 2 public comment periods in compliance with the minimum requirements of the open meeting law prior to adjournment. In addition, and this is a phrase that I don't hear anymore, in addition, it's Carson City's aspirational goal to also provide for item-specific public comment as follows: in order for members of the public to participate in the public body's consideration of agenda item, the public is strongly encouraged to comment on an agenda item when called for by the mayor chair during the item itself. And I think it's so clear and it's so transparent, and I think the public really, really appreciates that. And people who are new to the meeting, who read the agenda and see that there's just the required minimum, don't know that they can speak after other agenda items. And that's come up in our neighborhood when we were organizing to go to a supervisor meeting. Somebody said, well, I only have 3 minutes at the beginning, but I want to talk at this specific item. So I just wanted to, make that a little bit clearer. And all the meetings prior to 2020 had in their agenda that there was specific opportunity after each agenda item. And just for the heck of it, I went to the open meeting law handbook, which I find fascinating, 2019. And it did say that it was up to the discretion of the chair to decide whether or not to have public comment. And I thought, well, more than the 2. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I was still curious, so I went to the Nevada Attorney General, and we had a conversation there, which was fascinating. And he said, not the Attorney General, but his deputy, he said that the only requirement is the 2 minimum, and that the chairman can decide if they want more or if they want less, and if they're working with staff and they discuss it. And agenda doesn't have to say specifically, but in the interest of public participation and transparency, it's probably a good thing, but it's not, obviously, it's not required. So it's pretty much, up to each department. And I thought that was interesting, and I just wanted to share that with you for your consideration. Thank you.
All right, if there is no more public comment, let's move on to item 10, adjournment. Do we need a motion for that? All right, we're adjourned.